and how to restructure those debts to make sure that there's breathing space for African economies. Let me speak to Sani Abdurrahman. He's been covering this event from Monday till today. Let's understand exactly what the highlights have been for him covering this ceremony. Abdul, what will you say has been the highlights for you covering this event?
Well, for me, Maurice, I think for the first time we are seeing Africa wanting to develop homegrown solutions to its challenges, which we've not had for a while. It has always been how we can leverage and get support to solve our challenges, and that's quite commendable, because really if you want to grow the African economy, we need to move away from dependence on aid to also being competitive on the capital market and leveraging to finance our developmental projects. And if you look at the current challenges facing the world economy, including that of Africa, Ukraine war, the ravages of COVID-19 is still lingering, and you hear the African Development Bank wanting to move away from bureaucracies that has stopped it from being competitive, having access to competitive finance and on the international capital market, and ensuring that it can go and borrow and provide to countries at competitive rates, more or less patient capital to help them provide the solutions that Africans have been yearning for. So for me, that has been the highlight from this conference.
So even before the conference started, there was a $1.5 billion rapid food support credit for African economies because of the crisis in Ukraine, which has affected food prices. There's a need for Africa to grow her own food. Then there was a $25 billion pledge to support Africa's quest to adapt to climate change. There is a discussion about merging the balance sheet of the African Development Bank and the African Development Fund, so that they have, a strong capital base to go onto the market and raise capital to develop, the continent. Just yesterday, the African Development Fund celebrated its 50 years, and so far some 2,000 over projects have been delivered using that particular facility. The US yesterday promised that in the next 50 years they are still going to remain committed to that particular fund, which is the concessionary arm of the African Development Bank. So I think that by and large a lot has been said, and for me, how all the talk materializes is what I am looking for. And so the closing ceremony is very important, because we get to hear what the bank is going to do moving forward.
Of course, if you look at, for example, in the last 50 years, the ADF has been able to provide $45 billion in terms of support to African economies. And I was wondering, 50 years, 45 billion, can we say less than $1 billion a year? So how do we ensure that in the next 5 years the ADF can do away with the bottlenecks and be able to raise, let's say, $20 billion to support the recovery and resilience of the African economy, so that we can gradually achieve the result that we want to achieve in terms of improving the performance of the African economy, which we know is largely dependent on having access to good revenue and also competitive revenue.
Right. So you covered that event where the African Development Bank signed, is it $65 billion?
70 approximately.
To extend electricity to rural communities.
Yeah, that's quite significant, because we have some island communities that are not having access to electricity. And what makes this whole project unique, the SREP unique, is the fact that they are trying to extend clean electricity, not just any sort of electricity, maybe from thermal, but they are looking at clean energy. So it fits into the conversation about transitioning to green energy, because we are seeing that investment in electricity now, it's not just about providing power, but finding ways to ensure that the power being provided is clean, so that we reduce our emission of gases and also reduce our contribution to...
So Sani, in a short while, the Vice President will be here to close the ceremony, and so this is Market Avenue. Watch and enjoy the closing ceremony of the AFD annual meeting, which took place here.
you care about Africa. You came because you wanted to see Africa's progress. You came because you were not a bystander on Africa or a doubter of Africa and its achievements. You came because you have faith in Africa. You came because you are a partner of hope for Africa. It is amazing how fast the days have gone by. So quickly, the days and the nights. From flurries of meetings, to panel discussions, to special knowledge events, the African Development Bank opened its heart and shared its passion for hope for our continent with you. We shared our experiences. We told our stories. African heads of state, led by His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana, showed up to voice their support for the African Development Bank and to share their heart's desire for Africa's accelerated development. President Nana Akufo-Addo said to us, and I quote him, "We should activate a process that moves the African Development Bank from the corridors of billions to trillions, given the scale of our challenges on this continent." Speaking on the bold vision that he has for Africa, he continued, and I quote, "Ultimately, the African Development Bank must become the dominant financial institution for African transformation in the medium term." I think we should all agree and thank the President for that. Special thanks go to His Excellency President Philip Nyusi of Mozambique, President Samia Suluhu Hassan, my sister from Tanzania, the President of Tanzania, President Asali Asumani, the President of the Union of Comoros, who joined us by video, the Vice President, His Excellency Tienoko Melie Kone of Cote d'Ivoire, representing His Excellency President Alassane Ouattara, the Prime Minister Edouard Ingerente, the Prime Minister of Rwanda, representing His Excellency President Paul Kagame, and of course my sister at the African Union Commission, Her Excellency Monique Zanza Baganwa, the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission. The buzz around the corridors in any event, in all events, in every session was, what's African Development Bank doing about this issue? How can we partner, and with who should we partner? And how can we promote the work of the African Development Bank? We had a very extensive and engaging governance dialogue where I had the privilege and the opportunity to discuss and engage with our governors on our 5-year strategy. On high-five strategy for the next 10 years. Somehow, I think our governors also are like me. They like 5 things. It lasted 5 hours. So I'm cool. I like 5 things. I'm delighted and so very, very much comforted and encouraged that we finished the meeting with overwhelming support of our vision under my leadership for the bank for the next 10 years. Thank you. Of course, that doesn't mean that I am contesting for the next 10 years. Myself and the management of the bank are extremely grateful to you for your forthrightness, for your frankness, for your suggestions, for your ideas, for the inspiration that you give, that we know as shareholders of the bank that we are aligned with what you would like to see the bank do for the continent. So thank you for every single thing that you did for us. And at this point, since my governors are not getting any awards yet, I would like all the governors of the African Development Bank and their alternate governors to stand and remain standing. Please, give it up for all our governors. Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. You may be seated. You charged us to ramp up our high fives to fast-track Africa's development. You endorsed our plans to prioritize the transformation of agriculture for Africa. You ask us to pursue work on how to assure sustainable debt management for the continent. You task us to continue our work and leadership on climate change. You applauded our work and leadership on the just energy transition in Africa and our partnership with the G7 countries and of course the Republic of South Africa to help to mobilize together collectively, working with all others on this, up to $40 billion that will be needed in support of South Africa's just energy transition. We had a lot more. Your strong support for our continued work on quality infrastructure, making the African continent a free trade zone to work, boosting private sector on the continent, bolstering support for the youth and the women, building climate resilience all across the continent. All these are more and more, while being selective and building on the areas of comparative advantage of the African Development Bank Group. And there, all this also while assuring long-term financial sustainability of the bank. We had a celebratory time here about ADF at 50. We are so proud of what the ADF has achieved with your support. We are proud of our ADF donor countries for walking with us, for running with us, for lifting with us, and for building with us. With ADF at 50, we have built a great institution, the only concessional financing institution focused exclusively on Africa, and that is based out of Africa, that is based in Africa, not out of Africa. Africa's most trusted financial institution for low-income countries and fragile states. To build greater hope, we had strong support for the African Development Fund to also explore and work hard on this, on going to the market in consultations with our Board of Governors, so that we can leverage our resources to provide even greater support for the low-income countries and fragile states. That is extremely encouraging for us, and I'm grateful. The African Development Fund is going to the markets to use its accumulated equity of $25 billion to be able to raise $35 billion will not add to Africa's debt. It is the opposite. It will in fact reduce Africa's debt exposures. We at the bank will look at the volume of Eurobonds issuances by ADF countries over a long period of time from 2011 to 2021. And we compare it to the cost of getting the same amount of resources from the African Development Fund. Over that period, the ADF countries issued $35 billion worth of Eurobonds, and of course 10 billion euros also. Now these ADF countries will have saved a whopping 22 billion US dollars, and of course an additional 3 billion euros had they borrowed from the African Development Fund. I'm not talking of the bank. So ADF going to the market is good for Africa. It's good for development. It's good for the donors because it leverages donors' taxpayers' money to deliver greater value. And it is good for debt sustainability. To be able to do more, we had a lot of support for the SDRs, the special drawing rights, and I said no, I mentioned that I actually preferred it to be perhaps we can make it to be something like, you know, supporting development revitalization. Because that's what we've got to do, to revitalize development, because when a world of crisis after the other, we need development. We had very strong support for the SDRs to Africa, to also be channeled through the African Development Bank, Africa's only AAA rated financial institution, and a prescribed holder of the SDRs. And as you heard from us throughout this week, we can leverage those SDRs by up
to build, quote, a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development. The boards of directors, management, and staff should continue to work diligently towards a speedy completion of the next 10-year strategy and subsequent full implementation to achieve green and sustainable and inclusive development across our beloved and beautiful continent. I welcome and express best wishes to the new Bureau, comprising Egypt, Brazil, and Uganda, for a phenomenal tenure. Governor Tariq Amer, where is he? He's going to chair. There we go. I hand over to you to work with the chief optimist, the singing and dancing president. So recalibrate your tools of managing boards. This is going to be different. Welcome to it. Without a doubt, we've had a successful and constructive week. I said at the outset of these annual meetings, difficult conversation must be had and responsibility must be shared for us to make meaningful progress and realize our developmental aspirations. And that's precisely what we have done over the past week. Today, I feel even more honored to have steered the affairs of this august body, the highest decision-making body of Africa's premier bank, for 2 successive years. I'm even more humbled by the collective resolve demonstrated by each of us to advance the cause of our continent. Furthermore, we have seen the vibrancy of our youth, celebrated our diverse cultures, and tabled policy initiatives that level the playing field for the creation of a gender-responsive green economy. I also note of high satisfaction that we have collectively come to the table to proffer solutions to address the multiple challenges that confront us. Personally, I profited from the immense counsel of many regional and non-regional governors as we deliberated and reached a common ground based on collective trust. We are, of course, meeting at a difficult time in global history. Indeed, the exigencies of the moment, rising food and fuel prices amid limited financing tools, constrained further by elevated debt levels across the continent and the Russian-Ukraine war, demanded that we think out of the box to enhance the fortunes of our 1.3 billion people. I'm particularly proud that we laid our self-interest and focus our discussions on collectively breaking the injustices and inequities of the global financial architecture. Like the late great Archbishop Desmond Tutu said, exclusion is never the way forward on a shared path to freedom and justice. Undoubtedly, advancing progress on initiatives such as granting ADF market access and rechanneling SDRs through the bank should go a long way towards helping mobilize the requisite capital for our development and enhancing the prospects of market access for economies on our continent. President Akufo-Addo's Accra Declaration captures and enjoins us to have the attitude and the spirit to make sure that our bank becomes the most dynamic bank on the continent. We must also have the courage to continue to push for a framework, climate change framework, that respects historical responsibility and focuses on countries with much bigger footprints on past and present emission. Plato did say, the right is nothing more than what benefits the powerful. We must invoke, rather, our common humanity and build together. The balance sheet of climate change demands of us to seek this fairness. According to our bank's estimates, Africa will be owed carbon credits valued at over 4.6 trillion between now and 2020, representing an annual flow of $166 billion. In fact, Africa's carbon credit is almost 10 times the 18 billion global climate finance Africa received between 2016 and 2019, and much more than what we're required to do if our common humanity guides us as we make these regulations. As we advance, we must continue to have a unified voice, and table initiatives such as the introduction of carbon credits to ensure Africa can build forward better, smarter, and bolder, while avoiding locking up our or stranding our assets, and having our progress therefore derailed by the fallout from events that occurred hundreds of miles away from us. Without a doubt, the events of this week must further embolden us to reimagine an Africa that leverages its national and human resources to become the Eden of prosperity and human rights for the next generation. The Africa we want, the Africa that the world needs. Will the journey towards creating the Africa we want be difficult? Of course, but let us heed the words of our great Pan-African and our first president, Dr. Nkrumah, whose 50th years of passing we celebrate this year. And he said, countrymen, the task ahead is great indeed, and heavy is the responsibility. And yet it is a noble and glorious challenge, a challenge which calls for the courage to dream, the courage to believe, the courage to dare, the courage to do, the courage to envision, the courage to fight, the courage to work, the courage to achieve the highest excellencies and the fullest greatness of man. There we ask for more in life. That's our challenge. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I am proud of the progress we have made this week. Overall, our discussions have reaffirmed that despite the many challenges ahead, our collective resolve can ensure that we nurture an enduring recovery that creates prosperity across our entire continent and helps us create the Africa we want. Thank you for this transformation journey. As we depart, may we all continue to be united, speaking one language, and the President's song, One Love, let's get together and feel all right. But to more than feel all right. And as in Genesis 11:6 says, once we are united, nothing can restrain us, and we will do the impossible. I wish each and everyone a safe journey back home. Ghana is grateful and proud of holding the events of this week. Ayiko Munantiye. Thank you once again. God bless our bank. God bless Africa. God bless us all. Thank you.